Hello, hello. What's up, y'all?
That's pretty dope that it plays the intro like that.
Dude, I had to you can do that. You can play all kinds of shit on StreamYard. I could
Is it
theoretically upload a bunch of other shit.
is it time for an intro refresh, or is it
I
just what it is now?
I don't know, man. I think it's pretty awesome. Since you made it, you'd have to be the one to be like, maybe I could clean that up, clean this up, but
Yeah,
outside of that, I don't know. I think it's pretty iconic at this point.
I'm right. I'm like, are we in too deep that to change it would be not cool?
I definitely wouldn't want to change it drastically, but I mean, unless there was any like minor things that you wanted to
Oh, it still
to
doesn't
like
have any. It doesn't have any saxophones still.
it does not. Does
I'll hit
not,
my.
yeah.
I'll hit up Kevin.
Dude, if Kevin got on the intro,
That'd be so sick.
that would be cool as hell. What's up, guys? Tonight we're talking about Stephen King, as well as celebrating 1,000 subscribers.
Huge man, congrats.
Thanks, man. Couldn't have done it without you, bud. You are the lifeblood of this channel in many ways.
Kind of just hang out.
So yeah, it's gonna be real casual tonight. We're gonna just be hanging out, just talking about all things Stephen King. We figured this would be a pretty all-encompassing topic, so we're just gonna kind of talk about a little bit of everything tonight and just keep it real cash. Laren's in here. What's up, man? Thanks for being here.
It's good, Larry.
Appreciate you. Eric is in the house. Congrats. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, man.
Having the support of all you guys really means a lot. So I figure we'll just start off from the top. How did we discover Stephen King? I'll let you go first.
I was gonna say I think you should go first because mine actually, spoiler alert, mine comes from you more or less. So I think it makes more sense for you to start.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean when I was young, my mom had a big bookshelf in our living room, and it was just filled with rows and rows of Stephen King books, all with this really cool art, the old school art, none of that new bullshit they're making. And I mean, I was always just intrigued by it, like from before I could even read. Always intrigued by it. So eventually, I started taking them off the shelf. I'd look at the art. I'd look at the I look at like the little summary on the dust jacket or whatever. And then before, like eventually in like 6th grade, I think that was when I started actually like reading him. And I pulled the first Dark Tower off the shelf.
No,
Because that was
the
like,
first one.
yeah, it was
It's thin.
yeah, I was like, this is doable.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I saw the other ones. I was like, I'm aware of these, but I'm like, oh, this is a good place to start. This little book. So I started that first Gunslinger book, and I did finish it, and then I got into what's the Drawing of the Three is next after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I finished that, and then I might have started Wastelands and never got past it.
That makes sense.
Up until a couple years ago when I started the series over again, and I'm currently on the 5th one. I need to get back. Yeah, I need to get back into that because
We're pretty much at the same spot again. Yeah.
This is an odyssey that's been in the making for years and years at this point to finish the Dark Tower. Yeah, I'm dragging my ass. Honestly, I should be done by now, but so yeah, that was where it started for me. I would start a ton of those books. Like I would take them off the shelf, start them, never finished a lot of them, but I think I just wasn't ready at the time. I mean, of course I wasn't. I'm like in 6th grade, right? So yeah, and then it's
like 11.
It's kind of been it's just been no nonstop since then.
Dude, that has to be great. Did you have like a single shelf or something in the house?
Yeah, it was right in the living room.
The books are right here.
It was right in the living room. Big shed. Went all the way up to like the ceiling, I think.
Damn.
And Yeah, I was so enamored with like all the art and all the fucking titles, and I'm like, what could this be about? Because like I was
Mm-hmm.
reading like Harry Potter and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I went from like Harry Potter to Stephen King. Like that was my on ramp.
Yeah, it's a
I
natural
never really
progression.
I didn't go into like young adult. I just went full adult. I guess Harry Potter
Mm-hmm.
could be considered young adult.
Yeah, I don't know what young adult is either. Yeah.
It's like the fucking teeny bopper shit, like fucking Twilight and stuff, Divergent, all
Okay,
that
okay.
stuff.
I feel like Harry P fits in there. Yeah.
I would say so, but I feel like young adult has like this negative connotation to it, whereas like
Mm.
Harry Potter is like doing a lot more. Like anyone, Harry Potter is universal. Like it's not just for young adults. Like nobody's gonna like Divergent except for a literal young adult, or
Okay.
maybe not. There's probably adults who like it too, but you get what I'm saying.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, man, and it's been ongoing ever since.
Shout out your mom, man.
Dude, yeah, she got me into a lot of the stuff that I'm into as far as movies and books. Like they'd let me kind of watch whatever I wanted. Um and a lot of things I probably shouldn't have watched. But we talked about that on the first show, I think.
What
Movies
is
that
this?
we horror
Is
movies we
this?
saw too young. Yeah, this is the third one.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Eric says I think that I got him into King outside of some of his short stories. Yeah, Eric really likes the walk, I think it's called, or
Okay.
can't remember. It's like the walk or the jaunt or something.
I hope it's the
Um,
John. Dude, his short stories are fantastic.
and Eric's
I don't
also
read enough of them.
been trying to get me to read The Stand, which I have here as well. Um, Eric
I have
swears
not read
by
The
this
Stand.
book. It's a chunky one.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about all his books is they're so long. Like they're all super fucking thick, dude, and it's like
Yeah. No, I
it's
did start
hard for
reading
me.
this. I started reading The Stand. This is gonna sound real dumb because it is, but I started reading The Stand, thinking that I was starting to read Salem's Lot. I was like, I want to read the vampire book, so I got The Stand. The Stand is not the vampire book,
No, it's
and
not.
and and I got a good chunk into it. And this is like right on the heels of COVID, and The Stand is about like a virus. And
Mm,
I was like, I'm just reliving last year, and I couldn't. It was just bad timing. I just couldn't enjoy it. There's no
yeah,
vampires.
it was weird that time period because people were watching like pandemic movies,
It's good.
like their movie
Oh, they
Contagion.
made a bunch. They made a bunch.
Well, no, I mean for movies that already existed, and people were like watching them because they were like, "This is topical," and I'm like, "I don't want to fucking watch that right now."
Movies did that.
We were literally doing it, and like we were in the middle of it, and people were watching that shit.
Yeah, I'm good.
Um, yeah, the short stories are really good. Like I have his newest one that he just came out with. It's called You Like It Darker. Weird title, but
Great.
um I haven't finished any of the stories in it yet. It's hard for me to read these days. Like I really try, but it's hard to find the time, especially in the summer for me. But yeah, the short stories are great because it's almost like an anthology movie where you can just kind of get in and get out, and you
Mm-hmm.
get like a cool little story, and it's like easily digestible, but it's still impactful all the same.
Dude, there was it's like weird having time to like sit down and be like, I'm just gonna read for like 20 minutes. I guess I totally have time to do that, but I don't. You don't normally do that, right?
Yeah.
And but I had I was visiting my girlfriend years ago before we moved in together, and she was doing this thing at this obscure building, and I had like a couple hours to myself, and there was a library in walking distance. So I went, sat down, grabbed a short story book, and read it. And there's a short story, Laren, called "The Portal" or "The Door" of this guy that goes to space and then comes back, and some like real weird shit happens to him,
It's
and
not Stephen King, is it?
it's Stephen King. Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember which
So
collection it was in?
it's a this was like 2016, 20. This is like 2016. It might have been Nightmares and Dreamscapes. It was a
Hmm.
recent. It was like it's a recent-ish collection.
Nightmares and Dreamscapes is from like the '90s, dude.
Is it?
Yeah,
I'm
that's
dumb.
one of the old ones that I remember having on my mom's shelf.
They just reissue the
90,
artwork all the time.
1993.
Wow. All right, so I have no idea when it's from then, but it was great.
Oh yeah, you probably. I'm looking at this bullshit new artwork that they did. That's probably what you saw. All right, so you go ahead and give your introduction to King.
But yeah, so I mean, the first Stephen King thing that I interacted with was probably Rose Red.
The TV,
No,
right?
either Rose Red or Carrie, because I remember watching both of
Mm,
those really early. We talked about that a few months ago, like me watching Carrie when I was like 7 or 8 by myself,
yeah,
accidentally watched the whole thing.
got the
Awesome.
steelbook right here.
Yeah, dude, it's
This
terrifying.
this steelbook is awesome.
That's really awesome.
I got some visual aids here for the people who like physical media. So I just grabbed a whole bunch of random shit.
Oh, dope. You just have a
Yeah,
stack of Stephen King stuff next to you?
I mean, I figured it was appropriate.
Dope.
But please continue.
Yeah, so that was my first like actual touch point with like anything that involved him. I didn't really read growing up. I can read. I'm not like illiterate. I just never enjoyed
You're not
reading.
you're not Charlie Day.
Yeah, no. I totally can read. I just never liked it. And
Uh huh.
uh and then Mark actually finally got me to read when I was like literally like 20. Read a book called Thirsty,
Yeah,
which was dope. It was like an 80s vampire book that I just bought again actually, 'cause I never had my own copy.
dude, that's
And
awesome.
then and I read that, and then I started reading Harry P. And I'd go over to Mark's house all the time, and on his shelf in his room, he had a bunch of books that I assume are your mom's books, your mom's Stephen King
I
books.
inherited a bunch of books from her. Well, because what happened was I would have my shelf up in my room at the house, and I would take stuff from her shelf and bring it up there as I was reading it. And
Mm,
some of them just never found their way back on the shelf.
they
But
just
it's
never.
and I've told her like recently I've been like, hey, like I because she's been over here and I've been like, hey, I these are probably like, some of these are yours, and she's like, no,
Sure.
it's okay. She's like, she wants me to have them, so it's cool. It's cool to have, your mom's or whatever, whoever's someone like they have more sentimental value that way. But yeah, dude, I remember I would always be trying to like get you to read specifically Harry Potter because I knew you would love it, but just like reading in general, um, just so we could like talk about this shit. Because I'm like, dude, I need someone to talk about this with.
Reading is dope. Yeah, and like, and so I had to start. I was reading Harry P. And then I read the first Stephen King book that I read. Might have been The Talisman.
Dude,
I
the
think it was The
fucking
Talisman,
talisman, dude.
which is
That
one
was,
of my favorites still.
dude. So that was one that I started when I was a kid. Was not ready. Just
No.
simply was not ready. There's so much adult shit in that book,
But he
and
is like an 11 or 12-year-old kid.
Jack is 12, so it's really like an audience surrogate.
So good.
And that was one that I did come back to as an adult and finally finished, and it was so incredibly, insanely rewarding. That Talisman is amazing. I need to read Black House, the sequel.
Dude, black. Yeah, so I read.
Sorry, Eric says fun starts with a library card. That's cool. I recently just donated a bunch of Blu-rays to the library the other day.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, our,
Dope.
our public library here in our hometown. It
The
was
one by like Madison Station?
yeah.
Dope.
Yeah. So, but yeah, what were you're about to say something?
I read Talisman, read Black
Mm,
House, and then finally, because I would go and hang out at your house all the time back when you lived in Weekstown. And Mark had this little bookshelf in his room, and he had some of the Dark Tower books on there. And I remember going and looking at the artwork, I think in Dark Tower, like the book, like the last one in the series.
yeah.
And there's this really badass, like, visual, like, double page visual of Roland, and he's like, does like a rose. And I was like, what is this? I would like flip to a random page and read like a page and be like, what the fuck is going on here? And and
I did
then
the same
finally started
shit.
reading that and I just ripped through that whole series and so good. And then I've been
Dude,
locked in ever since.
in many ways, the fact that you've read The Dark Tower and I haven't is like crazy because I still haven't finished that Odyssey that I started back in 6th grade
Dude,
all those
it's
years ago.
yeah, it's kind of crazy. A lot of my like media influences and taste literally comes from like you slash your sister slash your mom.
It
It's
is
kind of
kind of
wild.
weird, right? Yeah, because we've known each other like our whole lives. So like in those days, it would be like, hey, check out this CD, or
Literally.
because like that's just how you would like consume media. Like you couldn't just like pull it up on your phone or
Send
whatever.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have a phone. You're like, here's this
Um.
burnt postal service CD, and I was like, I don't know what
Yeah.
that is. I'll
But
listen to
dude,
it.
yeah, I got Wizard and Glass right here. Um. This I don't. So obviously I haven't finished them right, but I think I'm gonna be hard pressed to find one that I like more than this one. And you told me how great it was, but I wasn't prepared for how great it was, dude.
So good. Has Eric read these?
No, he says he just said actually I need to get back. I stopped on the second one. Dude, it's hard, man. Like they're so dense and like the world is crazy and it's like it's almost like he doesn't want you to read the book. Like because it's like you know that there's a payoff, but the way King writes, it's like so wordy, and it's like you know that there's something coming to it. Like there's a reason why he's like, for lack of a better word, like putting all this bullshit because it's like, and that's one thing people have said about King, right? There's two
Yeah, yeah,
criticisms.
yeah.
They say he's over long and he can't write endings apparently. Um,
Fair.
and like fine, like I think if but like he is who he is, you know. So I'm not. Who am I to say that he's
Eric,
not good at what he does?
Eric, I will say a good proxy is like Stephen King. You know how like the first like probably sixth of his books, the first 15% or so is just like level setting, world building. He kind of takes you
Mm-hmm.
through everything, and like you kind of like once you read a couple of his books, you're like, okay, like I know what that is.
Yeah, you
The
almost
the
know what to
dark
expect.
the Dark Tower as a series, each book kind of does that, but I almost look at like the series as a whole does that. So by the time you hit like midway point of like the second book, like you're fucking you kind of know what's going on to an extent. The foundation is set, you kind of understand who Roland is, and then you're vibing, and then third book gets crazy, and then the fourth
Dude,
book is absolute banger, and then it just gets crazy from there.
yeah, there's really not in the ones that I've read anyway. A ton of like fucking around, like because there's the first couple aren't that long. Um,
Yeah, the first one
Guns
especially is like 200 pages, maybe.
Gunslinger's super short. You could read that like in an afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
The Drawing of the Three is not very long, and what's happening
It's,
in that book is like crazy page turner because you're
it's
like on a conceptual level, it's like, whoa, how's this gonna
mm-hmm,
happen? You know, when
mm-hmm.
Eddie's like trying to smuggle the drugs or whatever. Sorry for any,
Dude,
I mean, for the three people watching or whatever, but
it's
um,
so good. Yeah, it's so good.
no, it's fucking awesome. And then the fourth one is like this prequel story, and it's like,
We don't. I don't talk about it too much yet. 'Cause I know we're gonna talk. I know we're gonna talk about it. Yeah.
yeah, we can get to Dark Tower later. But yeah, just in general, it's crazy. So we all right. So we've established how we discovered Stephen King. Let's get into. I mean, we kind of talked about our favorite books a little bit, but
Oh,
like,
beautiful.
so yeah, you've mentioned Talisman. Would you say that's your favorite, or is Wizard and Glass is your favorite? Right? Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
I think Wizard and Glass is my favorite book
Just in general,
in general.
it's hard to say, man. I've always said Thirsty for the longest time. That vampire book. Um,
You've also
pers-
read a lot more books than me, but
Dude, that's the thing, man. Yeah, I don't really don't think I have. Like, I've
you read all, I didn't read growing up
all
like at
right. So
all.
growing up, but I read a lot. But those, I don't know if I'd call like it's like book fair books. It's like the scholastic shit.
Book
None of
Fair
them are
is really
super
good.
long, like Artemis Fowl. You know, series of unfortunate events, like that type of shit. So I guess like
Aragon,
quantitatively, like I've read more books, but like I haven't read like
sure.
books. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, okay.
But yeah, I don't know. Wizard and Glass is definitely top five. I'm pretty partial to 11, 22, 63. The time travel one.
I have not read that. I need to.
That's
I
the
know it's a thick boy.
it's fucking crazy. So basically, the guy has to. It isn't, none of this is a spoiler because it's like the selling point of the book. But it's a guy who's going back in time to 11/22/63 to save JFK from being assassinated.
So insane.
And there's just this inexplicable portal, but it only takes you to a certain year. I think it takes him to like 57. And when you leave the portal, you can come back and it takes you right back to that same moment in time every time.
Oh wow.
And so he's like, okay, I have to make a life for myself in the past
I gotta hang out here
and
until...
wait, because if he leaves, he just comes right back to to whatever the first year was.
He's like, I gotta get a job here now, and like,
Dude,
I
and
gotta pay rent.
and that's
and
what he
stuff.
does. But he's also like spying on Lee Harvey Oswald and shit. And it's like,
It's really good.
it's insanely good. Some crazy ass shit happens in it.
I think the longest King book I read was Under the Dome. That was thick.
Dude, Under the Dome is crazy too.
It was really crazy.
Eric is also a fan. It's crazy, man. I mean, it's hard. I don't want to talk too much about it, but like that premise, I think, yeah, it's
Wow.
it's not a horror book. There's some horrific shit that happens in it, but it's just like it's just a dank novel, dude.
Yeah, and we might... I don't want to cut off your favorite book, and like we might touch on this later, but like I feel like that's the perception of Stephen King is like way like over indexes on like the horror element, because he's not like... When I think of him, I think so much more like that weird in between like fantastical and horror, and just like weird but also like super realized characters and people and worlds and interesting plots. And yeah, he gets kind of crammed into horror in like a weird way.
Yeah, that's what he does super well, man, is like characterization and like even as far down to like as the way he like spells things like phonetically. It's like how it would sound. So if a dude has like a country sort of accent, like he spells out, the words, and that's not an uncommon thing for an author to do, but and then he'll but just the way he goes on to characterize the characters, like, and that's a part and parcel with the whole over wordiness of it, is because he's taking that time to really set the people up and stuff, and like sort of establish who they are and all that stuff, so that when shit does happen to them, you're like, oh, okay, like I care about this person, even if he's only around for the first, third of the book or whatever the case is.
Yeah, I feel like even like yeah, like a lot of his stuff maybe is overly long, but I feel like he creates these, even when they're weird and dark, he creates these like worlds and environments that like you want to just be in. Like especially Wizard and Glass, like that's like a book where I'm like, I don't want to leave this place that you've created,
Dude, yeah, when he's like describing that, I think it's called The Drop, with like all the horses and stuff, dude.
Yes.
It's great, man, because like you get to spend so much time there, and it's like relatively chill the whole time. Like there's some conflict, but
Yeah.
you know that there is conflict coming at the end of it, so it makes you kind of like, you're like, I don't want to leave this place, dude. Like I want to, I want to enjoy this place, and you do. It's so good. Yeah, he's really got range, man. I haven't read Fairy Tale yet. I have it. It's one of his more modern ones.
Okay.
Or more recent ones, I should say. But yeah, he's certainly got range. People forget that he wrote Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile and stuff. Neither of which are horror stories.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, Christine. Christine is one of my favorites. I know you were saying something about Christine the other day. I don't know if you wanted to. Would you consider that one of your favorites as well, or?
Christine was a great read, just experience-wise. Like I was traveling across the country at the time, just like reading it in the van as I was moving. Read it on the beach on the West Coast when I got there. I finished it like on the beach, which was cool. And that's your favorite one?
Oh no, I would say it's up there. It's one of my.
Mm.
I think I might like the movie more. Which
I gotta watch the
you
movie.
haven't seen this movie, have you, dude?
Nah, you told me to watch it the other day. I haven't
This
seen it
is one
yet.
of the best. I got my ticket stub right here. This is one of the best John Carpenter movies. Who also directed Halloween?
Wow, I've got John Carpenter. Okay, I need to watch it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal,
That seems like it lends itself to a movie super well.
dude. Stephen King and John Carpenter is like one of the best fucking pairings ever.
Yeah.
It's almost like not to go off on a segue, Creepshow, which is written. It's based on short stories by King.
Mm-hmm.
It's directed by George. It's George Romero, and it's got the makeup effects from Tom Savini, who is like a legendary VFX guy.
Okay.
So it's like this is like a trifecta of like
The Avengers of
horror
stuff.
legends. Yeah.
Oh, dope.
Yeah.
Christine is great, and the ending in particular, the last like couple pages are kind of like almost like not recontextualize the whole thing for me, but like there was like a lot of meaning, like a ton of meaning packed into like literally the last 2 pages for me. I don't want to spoil it, but like,
well, I've read it. It's been a long time though, and I don't know. You could say some things if you wanted to.
okay,
We don't have a ton to worry about, I think.
the only thing, you remember the two main characters, the guy and the girl? It's like a guy who,
yeah, it's
not the guy who gets the car, but his friend, who is essentially the main narrator, who you walk through most of the book with.
God, what's his name? I'm supposed to be a fan of this movie. Arnie. Arnie's the dude that gets possessed.
Yeah.
God damn it. I can't remember his name. It's gonna bother me now.
So you have Arnie's friend.
Okay.
And then this girl that he's like into that kind of
Dennis.
gets
Dennis.
Okay.
Dennis and Lee. Lee is the girl's name.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
You have Dennis and Lee, and essentially they're kind of like side characters to this guy that gets possessed by this thing, and they go through this whole like super surreal, crazy, horrific event for like a few weeks or whatever. And it's obviously like this bonding moment for them. Mm-hmm. And then right as this ends is when they're getting ready to go to college. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm just bringing these up. You can continue.
Yeah. You know, cause I don't see him, so please bring him up. So this whole crazy shit with this car and their friend, this whole thing happens. Dennis, oh, thank you. Yes, so Dennis and Lee get in this thing, and then they go away to college, or at least Lee goes away to college. I forget what Dennis does. And then they keep in touch they're just like writing letters to each other.
See, that's not in the movie, so I might have to reread this book because I think it's got a lot more to it.
Dude, yeah, so I'm gonna kind of spoil the plot, but like spoil this thing. Mm-hmm. They're writing letters to each other because they just like again went through this like surreal, supernatural, absolutely horrific thing. And then the letters, as they go on, Lee starts to be like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And Dennis is like, yo, like this happened and this happened, and like it was like an anniversary of one of the dates of like that the dude died or something. And she was like, yeah, like this is crazy. Like I have no idea what you're talking about. And then Dennis was like, what? And he's like confused, and it's like, and so like that for me hit me in a weird way where I was like, is Lee like, is this her like processing with this trauma that she went through when she was younger, as just like kind of pushing it out of her head, as in being like, as in like, okay, like I need to live a normal life and I can't accept that this happened.
It's like a defense mechanism, or is it like a supernatural thing that's like forcing her to forget
that, or is it Dennis, who has been the main narrator the whole time? Is he just unreliable and none of this stuff actually like fully happened, and we're now realizing that like he's kind of crazy? Like,
well, but she sounds like she knew, like she was accepting of it early on in the letter exchanges. You're right.
Yeah, but it's like I feel like when you have like a super unreliable narrator, it's like at what point is the drop off where all of a sudden like you start to get the actual reality versus
Mm.
like being in his head and getting his reality? I don't know. It really struck me for some reason. Like it's literally the last 2 pages really kind of reset what was going on, and it was great.
Dude, that reminds me of something that happens in It,
Mm.
which is that when the kids leave the town, their memories
Oh wow.
of everything that happened um, leave them, and so there's one kid, Mike. I think it's Mike who stays behind, and he remembers, and he calls
Mm.
them all back. And then when they come back, they eventually remember. So that's one thing King loves to do as well, where it's
Interesting.
like in It, it's like he the book is split up into like you kind of you alternate between like um children
When they're kids and when
and
they're yeah.
adults. Yeah, and so um it's like as the reader you could potentially be like impatient because you're like waiting because you're like okay, like because you know that this happened, but you're waiting for the characters to remember it, and then
Mm.
then the way that it happens is so incredibly satisfying, and you're like, ah, yes, like that's why you took so long to get there.
Mm.
Like, because if you had just been like, they cross over like a line, and then you're in
And
the
they're like,
town,
oh yeah.
I remember, and it's like like that's not satisfying. So it's like the
Yeah.
main takeaway is that like you really just have to trust him and just kind of
Yeah.
go with the flow, because like he knows what you want and he's gonna give it to you, but you just gotta like you gotta earn it. And that's what his
Mm-hmm.
books are, because it's like when you finish a King book, dude, and you like put it down, it's like you feel like you're different. That's
Yeah.
really, I find that to be true with any book, really, any good book, but
Mm-hmm.
especially a Stephen
Mm-hmm.
King book, and especially for me because I've placed so much significance on so many of these ever since I was a little kid. So it feels like cathartic in a pretty profound way
Mm.
anytime I'm able to like check one off my list.
This is getting me excited to get back into King now.
Dude, yeah, I need to finish that 100%. It's like it's hard, man. It's like because when I read, I like to read. Like I want to read for like 2 hours straight and not stop.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for me to be like, okay, I'm gonna switch into reading mode, and then I'm gonna read this book for like 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna do
Yeah.
something else, and then maybe I might pick it up again later. Like it's hard, man. It's hard for me.
You, you almost look at it, and this makes sense, but you almost look at it as like a movie-esque experience where like I'm gonna sit
Yeah.
down, this is what I'm doing for the next couple hours.
No, and it's like a book. It's like
Ideally.
for me, a book is something that I'm reading for like a month. It's like that's a part of my life for a month,
Mm-hmm.
and and that's on the short end of things. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm really hammering through it, because I can read fast, but I don't necessarily like to. I like to really like
Sit,
take my time with it and enjoy it,
be in
and
it.
yeah, kind of like snuggle up,
Mm-hmm.
get like a hot bev or something, and really enjoy it. um,
Did you give us your favorite Stephen King book?
God, my favorite's hard to say, man.
You
It's
picked
hard.
the topic.
I've given several. I've given several already, dude.
Oh,
I,
books plural. All right, fair. Yeah.
it's probably 11/22/63 or Under the Dome.
Under the Dome's crazy.
I would have to give it to one of those. You read Under the Dome?
I did. Yeah, a couple years ago.
That's fucking nuts. I forgot
Dude,
that you read that.
it's crazy.
That book is crazy.
I can
It's
totally
so good.
yeah, I do totally see the argument of like his endings aren't great, but
Mm.
like I don't know. I'm
It's
also
almost,
like
I don't really buy into that, man. Like people have been saying that since before we were even born. So it's kind of hard to be like, it's hard for me to look at
yeah,
it and be like,
yeah.
yeah, I guess. Like I don't know. It's but you enjoy so much the process of getting to the ending that it's like you almost don't even care by the time you get there.
Or maybe they're unconventional. Maybe it's that more so, or is it's not like oh like of course like that's how it ends. Yeah, that's it. It's like they kind of end and you're like what?
Like I
Which
don't
I
know.
like.
People say that, but it's like I've never come away from really anything and been like, yeah, that fucking sucked. Um,
Well, I feel like Under the Dome ends, and it kind of like it gives you a ending that closes out the story that you've been reading, but then it also is like, hey, like this is the ending, but by ending it this way, we're kind of opening all these questions up, and you're like, God damn it.
yeah, that's
And
another good point.
but I personally really like that though.
Yeah, yeah. People are saying that Under the Dome. I just googled it real quick. People mostly seem to think Under the Dome's ending is bad, and I don't agree. I think
Yeah,
I think the ending was awesome, and like
yeah,
maybe the reveal is sort of weird, but like it's almost so insignificant, like how it's happening, and just more so the fact that it is happening because that's
yes,
what you're dealing with through the entire book.
yep,
So that's really what the stuff that interests me in the case of that one.
agreed. Yeah,
Um, let's move over to our favorite movie adaptations.
oh man.
We've covered a little bit of these here, but we can just run through them if you want. And you can talk about some of yours first if you like.
I mean a pencil.
All right.
um, hmm. So I think it is really interesting. Have there
Mm.
been any other um updated adaptations to like the level that they did the 1990 it and then the 2017 it? Have they like done that to that scale for anything else?
I don't think so. It's hard to say because no, I don't think they have.
Because like 1990 is like I think it was like a right to TV, or it was like
It's a made for TV.
a limited
It's
series
a
or
made for
something.
TV movie. It was a 2 night event. It was like an hour and a half
Mm.
movie and another hour and a half movie. So the whole thing is 3 hours total.
Dude, that's probably so dope. Your mom, I'm sure your mom. They did
So-
Salem. They updated Salem's Lot too.
yeah, Salem's Lot hasn't come out yet. I think that's coming out on HBO Max at some point. It's a straight to HBO Max thing, but
Oh, what?
Salem's Lot was also a TV movie, which is
Oh, interesting.
also 3 hours long, I think. So we haven't seen the new one yet. So that's on the way.
Very
Um,
interesting.
but yeah, well, because people love the 1991. It's pretty beloved,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
it would definitely had like there was room to improve that. Um, for sure. So, and especially by doing it two movies. Um,
Yeah.
I like the first It 2017. I'm not crazy about the part two that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, didn't really like that one at all. Actually, I think it's actually quite bad.
Hmm.
Um, it's very like formulaic in its execution. Have you seen It Chapter Two?
I have not. It's all the same people though, right? I imagine the same
Yeah, which
director and
is
stuff.
yeah, it's all the same everything, but I don't it's very the entire middle act is just like every kid in order has to go and find this item of significance.
Mm.
Well, it's actually the adults, and they have to go and
Mm-hmm.
find things that they left when they were kids. And it literally goes in order. This character goes here, um,
That was the thing.
finds the thing, gets scared by Pennywise, gets away, do it again with the other characters, rinse and repeat.
Okay.
And then like so that's all pretty lame. And then I really don't like the like CGI that they use in
Hmm.
those movies because it's like Pennywise will take on the form of whatever scares them, and it's all just
Mm-hmm.
like this really awful looking like CGI pretty much every time that he does it,
Weird.
and it just looks bad, and that doesn't look good. But those movies are huge for like the younger generation.
The first one's I really enjoyed the first one. We saw it together. A bunch of us went and saw it together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like it's very fun. Like it's scary, but there's lots of like fun, weird moments, like the rock fight.
Yeah, yeah. It almost has it's channeling a bit of like Goonies sort of Stand
Mm-hmm.
by Me vibes.
Yep.
Undead of Night says there was a 2004 remake of Salem's Lot, so that would mean that there's actually 3 versions of that.
With Rob Lowe.
Yeah, I haven't seen this.
I like Rob Lowe.
And then The Stand has 2 TV versions also. Yeah,
Dude, I feel like
they just did
he
one a
just kind
couple
of.
Undead Note. Yeah, he knows his stuff. Yeah, the recent Stand I didn't hear too much about. I don't think, but the one from the '90s actually hear is not bad. I've been wanting to check that out.
I feel like people just go to Stephen King and they're like, "Yo, can we make this into like a show or a movie or something?" And he's like, "Yeah, fucking whatever."
Dude, so that's the thing, man. For there's so many good Stephen King movies, and there's a lot of bad ones too. Like it runs
Mhm.
the full spectrum.
Mhm.
Um, I
Which I kind of dig. Like I like that he's just like
well,
he's like,
because
"Yeah,
his
good."
body of work is so massive
Mhm.
that it stands to reason that um, not they're not all going to be winners. So
Dude, go if I can jump back to the 1990 it
yeah, yeah,
version. I really so I saw that young as well, right? So it was like it was very scary when I saw it. I love Tim Curry. I think he's great as Pennywise. He's just like
yeah.
so energetically like just so weird.
He really
And what I
embodies that character.
yeah, and like what I think that one does that the current like the 2017 one doesn't do and a lot of other adaptations of his work doesn't do is it captures just like that weirdness, that like uncanny like a lot of the music in the 1991 is very like these like weird bouncy synths,
Yeah,
and they're like add a key, and there's so much that's just like it's not quite scary and it's not like gory or horror, but it's just really weird.
yeah.
And I feel like they capture that super well, and that's like I associate a lot of that with him more so than I do like scary like monster horror
I
stuff.
mean, I'm going to be honest. The only reason that people like that 1991 is because of Tim Curry.
He's
Like
great.
he without
A lot of the
Tim
other acting is not very good.
without Tim Curry, that thing has almost nothing of note about it. Um,
Seth
so
Green.
a young Seth Green, sure, but like, and to what you were just saying, it's almost like because spoiler alert, Pennywise is an alien. He's not.
Mm-hmm.
He's like from a different planet. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
his. It's like an alien's idea of like what a clown would be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like what it is. It's like his own take on it based on like his reading of their fears. So that's kind of what gives it like that almost that otherworldliness to it.
And I feel like they capture that better in that one than they do in
Yeah,
like the
so that
previous
I would
ones.
say that is a positive for the 91 as well. But that's all Tim Curry. Like that's all him.
Tim,
Um
Tim Curry, man.
he really killed that. Beyond the Grave Media is here. Who's really along with Undead of Night, these two guys have really been really supporting the channel and stuff a lot lately. So I just want to say thanks to you guys. They always leave nice comments and stuff. So I really like seeing those. Apparently the Rob Lowe Salem slot, nope, not good. I'm assuming is what you mean.
Nope.
And then the 79 miniseries is so good. Yeah, I need to watch that actually. I started that
Interesting.
a long time ago, and then I realized it was 3 hours, and I was like, oh fuck no, I'm not watching a 3 hour movie right now. So unfortunately that is a blind spot for me, but I do want to check it out, especially because it is Toby Hooper, director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, among other things.
Oh, interesting.
John Doe Juggalos here. Thanks so much for popping out, man. Yeah,
Great name, John.
it's a, it's a little late at night, but it is a weekend. So I'm glad that you guys could all come out. I know there's probably a couple other live streams taking place right now, so even if you don't stay for a while, it's nice to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks for pulling up.
um, where were we at? Just 1990 in general, or
Fucking Tim Curry, man.
dude. So I
Do
do
you
want
have
to
that?
1990 it. Yeah, I showed it earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you had them side by side. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a pretty bare bones Blu-ray. There's nothing special about it. But dude,
Tim Curry on it.
Gotta shout out some love to
Wow,
Sleepwalkers.
that's the crazy artwork on that.
Dude, Scrape Factory. This was back in their bit of their prime.
It goes so hard. I need to watch that still too.
You still
I
haven't
feel
seen
like
this?
no, but I've watched the video. Like I feel like
Dude.
I know
You
it.
have
You
to,
know?
you have to watch this, dude. That video
Dude.
does nothing to convey the madness that is Sleepwalkers, dude.
Dude, the scene where he turns into like the cat person and the cop does like the double take.
He said, "What the fuck?" Dude, yeah. This was it's fitting that the two topics tonight, Stephen King and hitting 1K are kind of they're kind of tied here.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first video that we did here on the channel. I'm still proud of that video. I haven't rewatched the entire thing start to finish in a while. I looked at it the other day when I was making the short. It's not great, but it is what it is, and part of its charm. The video, not the movie. I guess this could go for the movie as well, actually. So in a way, it's kind of fitting. But nah, this is just a super special movie, and it's got even more significance now because of its place on the channel. So you should definitely check that out, if for nothing else other than to sort of have that association with it.
I love going back and looking at the shot that you had set up for yourself.
Dude,
for the first video.
What was I doing, dude? It has like the whole
It's like crotch level.
It's like my whole body is in the shot. Like for some reason, you know what it is? I have that director's chair.
Too high.
Well, I'm like, okay, the chair is cool, right? So like I gotta get the whole chair in the frame.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Now I don't even use it anymore. I just use my computer chair.
I realized that. Yeah.
I'm a little lower to the ground now, because of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I find that it works.
Yeah.
Because the director's chair, I have to like lug it back and forth, and this is like already in my room, so
I don't think anybody's like, whoa, this guy's got a fucking director chair? Like...
Where's the director's chair, dude? Where's that production value? But let's see. Dude, have you ever seen Dreamcatcher?
No.
This is a good movie. It's fucking yeah, dude. I'm not just fucking pulling out random movies over here.
You're like, no, this is a Spielberg movie.
Yeah, man, it's Spielberg. No, this is this is a good. This is like a weird fucking movie. It's very all over the place, just tonally, and like even so far as like what is happening in it, because like it's like there's a lot of like different plots going on. But it's basically about these four friends who go off on a trip into this. They go on the same trip like every year, I'm pretty sure.
I'm already in, but okay.
And the one day they're doing it, they're on the trip, and an alien invasion is happening. So that's all I'm gonna say about it. But it's just kind of dealing with them being like, "Hey, this is going on now."
Now what?
And now they gotta like figure it out.
Dude, can I comment on that real quick?
Yeah,
I feel like that is at his core, like that's what, and I've said this before, but I feel like that's what Stephen King does so well, is he sets up these situations and creates these characters where he's just like, yeah, like this is just real, and you're like, yeah, these are real characters, this is real people, this is like a real situation, like, all right, like whatever, and then he's like, but now this thing's also happening, and you're like, what? And the characters are like, what? And then you're locked in there with the characters because they realistically react to this like crazy surreal thing that's happening to them after he has established them as like normal people in a normal place. And I feel like he does that. He really takes the time. Maybe that's why the intros are so good. He takes the time to do that and set it up, and then you're bought in. Similar to like we always come back to Hereditary, but like that's what Hereditary does. Right, where you're like, okay, this is his family, this is normal, whatever, and you're like, this is happening, and the family's like, this is happening, and so you're like you're on the same page as the people that are going through the thing in the story, which I think is effective.
Yeah, he does a good job of making like an audience at least one audience surrogate
Yeah.
in the book. He does a lot of like point of view like
Yep.
characters and chapters and stuff. So but the other fun thing he does is he'll drop you into the point of view of a character, and they're going about their stuff, and they don't make it a point to explain to you the context, because from this person's perspective it wouldn't make any sense for them to just be announcing what they're doing. So
They're just doing their thing.
you kind of have to figure it out based on the context clues, and then also you have to just keep reading, because then you're going to really understand. And so it really builds and builds and builds.
Dude, and he'll do that for like a paragraph, or like a couple sentences, where like he'll describe something that's happening, and like especially in the Dark Tower, he does this a lot, where like a lot of the story you're in like a like you're following the whole group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he'll kind of jump around between telling the story through the perspective of a certain group member, and he won't say like so and so is thinking this, but he'll use certain words or certain slang or something that you can tell like, okay, he's talking through Eddie's point of view right now
Mm-hmm.
because he's cursing a lot, or he's talking in this old style, so he's talking through like Roland's eyes right now, and
Right.
like so good, man.
Yeah, just the level of care and the attention to detail, it's incredible. What are some of your other favorite adaptations, man? Just anything King, basically.
I haven't seen it in a while, but I love The Green Mile.
Dude,
Just
I haven't
because,
seen
like,
that either. I've heard it's just super sad, so I just haven't watched it.
you haven't watched The Green Mile?
No, dude.
All right, well, everybody, whoever is here now needs to shame you publicly right now for not having watched. Dude,
Bro,
Dude, Stephen King and Tom Hanks.
I could throw out a dozen fucking King movies that you definitely haven't seen either. So,
I've seen the Tom Hanks one.
well, that's the most mainstream of them, I would argue. So it makes
Exactly.
sense that you've seen it.
Dude, it's like,
Dude, I've seen like clips out of context of Michael Clark Duncan crying, and something's about to happen to him, and it's not good.
he's sad, bro.
Yeah, and I'm like,
he's got a lot
and
going
I'm like,
on.
I don't want to be sad, so I haven't watched. It's the same reason I haven't watched like fucking Schindler's List, man. Like, when am I going to be in the mood to watch that, bro?
No, but Green Mile isn't like, it's not like, it's not overwhelmingly upsetting.
It's just
like,
it's a heavy watch for like after work one night. Is kind of
sure.
how I look at it.
Dude, it's so good though. It's like, it's extremely good. And I that's like a movie that has been in my life for some reason for a really long time before I realized that it was a Stephen King thing. So it
Yeah,
was just this movie that I saw when I was young, and I was like, wow, like that movie was crazy.
same with
And
like Shawshank, man.
that what was the other one too? There's something else we talked about recently.
That's not horror.
Yeah. Or no, maybe Carrie. I didn't know
Oh yeah.
I don't know who Stephen King was, but like I knew that movie. But
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, Green Mile, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the one we haven't talked about yet is The Shining.
Oh my god. Yeah.
I don't know how we haven't talked about this yet, but yeah, Shining. That's that's like a top 10 horror movie for me in general. Stand by Me, yeah, that's
That
one that
one's
we
great.
forgot too. Yeah, a lot of people probably don't know that that's King.
I feel like the story really saves. I feel like a lot of the performances from the kids are like not great.
No,
But
I
like
think they've held up pretty well actually.
I
Stand
feel
by
like
Me is a really great movie, like in almost every way, I would say.
I feel like I don't know, I watched it a couple years ago and I was like, meh. But like as a whole, like it's great.
Yeah, it's almost like how we talk about with most horror movies, where most good horror movies, where if you take the horror elements out of it, it's still a really great story. And I feel like that's sort of like what he does, what King, like he just is able to create great stories. He just happens to be obsessed with like the macabre and stuff. So like if King wanted to, he could have made a career just doing Stand by Me's and Shawshanks and stuff. But he's
Wow,
like
that's
but
interesting to think of.
he's like, what if I did this instead?
What if
He,
like the spooky thing was also
he's like,
happening?
what if I did this story, but then some fucked up shit happens, and that's just how he operates, man. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah, The Shining. This is one that has, um, bang, he beat me to it. This is one that has another version. There's the King's TV version, and Kubrick's, which is this one.
I've not seen. When was the King's TV version from?
That's somewhat time in the '90s too. Um, so Stephen King, famously did not like Kubrick's version.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in 1997, him and Mick Garris, director of Sleepwalkers, did their version of it, which is, I haven't seen it. I hear it's not great, but apparently it's a lot more faithful to his book, which was his whole problem with Kubrick's version to begin with.
Sure.
So it's more faithful to the book, but I hear it's not great. If you guys in the chat have seen it, like, let me know what you think of it.
Is there any chance that the TV version has the kid from the Little Rascals movie in there who plays Yeah? Because I have a because I have a visual in my head of having watched part of The Shining as a kid, and the kid that's in it is the kid from the Little Rascals movie. Yeah, which doesn't make any sense because he's not the kid in the movie. Maybe it's that.
Yeah, it is. That's correct. His name's Cortland Mead. I just googled it.
Wow.
Damn, dude, your brain pulled that one out.
I don't know. I never bothered to like look that up, but that's just been like this weird thing that was like stuck in the back of my brain somewhere where I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But
I'm glad we
whatever.
shook that one out.
Bro, I'm glad to get rid of that. King had a cameo
As the band leader, Gage Creed. Isn't that the name of the kid from Pet Sematary? Gage? I can't quite remember.
He loves doing that.
He's had a lot of cameos. He's in Pet Sematary. I think he's like a preacher at a funeral in Pet Sematary.
He has a good cameo in Rose Red as a pizza guy. He like shows up to the house briefly.
That's cool. He's got a whole segment in Creepshow. He's on our thumbnail actually. He's
oh, is that what that's from?
Yeah, he's got a whole segment where he acts in the movie. Oh, dude, his performance is fucking phenomenal. In like the worst way.
He looks insane.
Interesting. All right, let's move on to our least favorite adaptations. We're getting towards the end here.
I mean, I have a clear one, but you go ahead.
So I actually didn't think too much about this. You start us off with this if you don't mind.
So in 2018 or so, probably they made a Dark Tower movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you at this point, sorry to interrupt. For context, you had been reading them, yes?
I had been reading them. I either just finished them or was like in the process of. I was on like the 6th or 7th book, like the last one or the second to last book. I think I had read all of them.
So you had skin in the game, like you were invested in how this movie was going to turn out.
Dude, I'm so excited. I'm somebody, I don't watch trailers. If there's something that comes out and it's a director or an actor I really like or an adaptation I really like, I'm like, I'm in. I'm not gonna watch a trailer. I'm just gonna go. And so that was 100% the case with this. And so my assumption was that they were gonna be like, okay, this is gonna be a series. We're gonna do the first book or maybe the first couple books. I could see that, it being the first 2 books, one movie. So I figured it was something like that. And then I don't know if anybody has seen the Dark Tower movie, but the way I've described it to people before is like if somebody had read all of the Dark Tower books while very drunk and then explained them to somebody while they were still very drunk. And then like a year later, that person that they told them to got super drunk and then tried to like write a script for what happened for like a 90-minute movie. And
Dude,
then they made that.
it's like 90 minutes, bro.
I think it's exactly, they just knocked it out. It's like 10,000 pages of book, and they were like, we can just cram this into one.
2017.
This one movie.
Damn, that was 2017. Yeah, it's an hour and
It's
35 minutes.
all right, 95 minutes.
Like, dude, yeah, so I have almost no memory of this movie, like, at all.
Fine.
I barely remember it. I saw it with you in the theater. I had not yet begun my return to the series, so I only knew sort of the context of the first two or three books at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
I I remember you like I remember like this the face that I had at the end, and I remember you turning to me as like the credits were rolling, and you just kind of having this like look, and you being like, "So how was that?" Like, I forget what you said, but
like
you were like, "How does it
relative
match up to the
to
book?"
yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Dude, like it was like they literally tried to cram the entire 7-book series, sort of, into one thing, and then threw Matthew McConaughey in, who I like, but they kind of threw
Yeah,
him
I
in
like
there.
McConaughey too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then absolute abomination, rough.
Yeah, so I think the fact that I don't remember absolute dick about this movie really kind of goes to show just that kind of tells you what you need to know right there.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to watch it again just to kind of just for like, oh, it might even be worse than I'm remembering.
well, you know what? You probably you have to read like because a lot. So this isn't really a spoiler, but a lot of what the movie deals with is like stuff that happens in the last like 2 books, 3 books,
Oh, they
which
go
is
that far, huh?
yeah, but they don't like it's like super out of context. Like it doesn't really make any sense in the movie because like in the books there's all the stuff that like explains why those things are happening. And the movie they were just like, this is going on, isn't that bad? And you're like, I don't know. Is it? I don't know.
Dude, that is so ridiculous because wouldn't the idea be to make a sequel? Like that's all these studios want to do is make sequels to things because
Like,
two movies makes more money than one movie and so on.
usually.
So
Yeah.
why are you including elements that would theoretically be in your last movie? I mean, it just
Yeah,
makes
they
no sense.
fully
It just makes no sense. Like
yeah, there was no way.
from a studio perspective.
Yeah, and it's like, and it was such a bummer because like in that, like in watching that movie, like I feel like we hit. There's a point where there's like some rat people, and it was at that point where I was like, oh, like they're doing the whole thing right now. Like
You're
there's not
trying to
gonna be a
tell
sequel.
7 novels worth of story in a 90-minute movie.
Yeah, we hit like the 35-minute mark, and I was like, oh, we're on like book 4.5 right now. Like that's I was like GG.
We are just running through these
Yeah,
things like they're nothing. It's just incredibly disrespectful to the source
but
material.
I think Amazon Prime or maybe HBO is doing. At least a year ago, the news came out that they were doing like a series of them. I
Dude,
don't know what
yeah,
the state of that is though.
it's supposed. I remember that as well. Mike Flanagan was supposed to be attached to that.
Yes, and what is Mike Flanagan? Where's Mike Flanagan from?
Mike Flanagan is one of the best horror directors working today. He did Doctor Sleep. He did The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor. He did Midnight Mass. He's done a bunch of other stuff. He's incredible. So if when I heard that he
Good
was,
hands.
yeah, when I heard that he was attached to that, I was like, oh, that's perfect. Like that would be perfect. He's done he did Gerald's Game. He did the adaptation of Gerald's Game for
Oh,
Netflix.
I have not seen that. I need to watch that though.
It's quite good. It's quite good. But obviously that's a lot different than Dark Tower. Dude, adapting
Mm-hmm.
Dark Tower and doing it well,
So insane.
it's like how could you? How do you? And I haven't even finished the series yet, but I
It gets
know that I know the
it gets
scale
crazier.
and the implications and the things that you would have to do.
Dude, the second book would be crazy to me.
Yeah, and you would have to leave like some things are going to get left out.
Sure.
So, do you think it would work better as like a series where it's like, let's say maybe, the first, well, with the first book, you probably don't have 8 hours worth of content, right? So
I
maybe
think the first and second
you could do maybe the first two books as one season, and
set
then
up the whole squad.
from there on, each season, 8 hours maybe of content for each book. It's better than 2.5 hours per book.
Or what they could do is like, so you have the first book, you have Roland and you meet Jake for a while, right? And then second book is all him getting Eddie and Susanna.
Yeah,
And then it's not till the beginning of the third book that they re-squad up with Jake.
yeah.
And I could
Wait,
see
that's the. Is that the fourth book that they get Jake?
no, it's the third. It's the third.
I thought that they
That-
get Jake in the fourth one, and then from there it goes into Roland's thing. Maybe I'm forgetting.
Or-
Because then they go to that town with the train at the end.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I could almost see all of that depending on how long the series is, like how long a season is, like the beginning of the first book to like the first half of the third book being one long series. Like you meet Roland, you kind of meet Jake, and then they get the whole squad together, and you get Jake back fully reunited by the end of the first season. I think that makes sense. Put the whole
Dude,
squad together.
I feel like the budget would be so insane. You'd have to really let Flanagan cook and not try to get in his way, or whoever it winds up being. Whoever it winds up being needs to be someone with um, a deep understanding of the source material. Real quick, Undead of Night says Midnight Mass is pretty much Flanagan's love letter to King and Salem's Lot.
Ooh.
Yeah, I would. So I love Midnight Mass. I think that's the best thing Flanagan ever did. You should absolutely
Okay.
check that out. It's on
Okay.
Netflix. And my buddy Nick at the Lost River Drive-In just popped in to say thank you. Nick, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate you popping in and saying that. I really it's been a wild ride. I've had many ups and downs, but I'm really happy to have hit 1,000. So thanks, you guys. Really awesome. So yeah, definitely check out Midnight Mass.
Mm-hmm.
Flanagan is
Write it down.
like when I heard he was the guy to potentially do Dark Tower, and I'm worried now that maybe that's not happening because it's been so long and we haven't really gotten any updates, and like Flanagan's been like working on other stuff. He's actually been tapped to do the new Exorcist movie that's coming out. So like who the fuck knows whenever that's gonna happen, if it's ever gonna happen. But then it's like, what if they do it and it sucks, man? Like what then?
What? Well, they did the movie, and the movie sucked, and like whatever.
I know, but it's like, do we want to live through that again?
Yeah, if it's like a 6 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's sorry.
No, go ahead.
Dude, yeah, it's like whenever anyone I would imagine starts on YouTube, it's like that first milestone is 1,000. I guess 100 before that, but like 1,000, and that's sort of when people, like in my mind at least, will look at you and be like, okay, this guy is like, you kind of are taken a little more seriously, I think. So I definitely agree with that, Nick. It definitely is validating. Seeing the views on shit is really nice. You know, the validation is nice. That's why we do this. We don't just want to make stuff for no one to see. So it's really awesome. But yeah, you were saying 6 hours of Dark Tower.
Yeah, I guess that'd be rough. Like 95 minutes. You're like, all right, that kind of sucked. Like, whatever.
Right.
Let's go
It's
get dinner.
less of a commitment. Like
Right,
I don't
but
want to
to be on
sit
episode
down.
3, and you're like, this gonna be good or
Yeah,
no?
you wrap up the first episode hypothetically, and you're like, "Ooh, that wasn't great," but I'm gonna come back
Maybe.
to see if they get it, and it's like you just keep doing that week to week, and it's like, "Oh, this fucking blows."
And
um,
it's like,
that'd
and
be
it's
such
like,
a bummer.
and it's like the casting, because it's a small core cast
Yeah,
that has a lot of interaction and growth with each other, and like, you gotta get it right. Who plays Roland? I don't know.
dude,
Me and Ellie talk about that a
we've
lot.
talked about this. Who do you think you cast as Roland, man? And it's like the other thing is this show's gonna take like 5 or 6 years to even make. So
You
you've gotta cast with that in mind as well.
so if they made it like 30 years ago, Roland's like a straight up like Roland is like Clint Eastwood.
He's
Like
literally like cited
he's that guy.
as looking like Clint Eastwood. Yeah,
But my vote, I'd say we wait another 20 years and then we make it and we cast like 55-year-old Jake Gyllenhaal.
dude. Yeah, that's the other thing. He like gets aged up. Like Roland at the end
Yeah,
of the first book, like sleeps for like 100 years or something crazy like that. Where it's like I don't even think I registered that when I first read it as a kid. But yeah,
it's
he's
pretty
older.
inconclusive exactly what happens.
It's
Yeah.
fucking bizarre. Yeah, and then it's like, oh, he's just like it's cool as fuck because you're reading this book and you're like, wow, Roland is this cool badass gunslinger, and then by the end of it, they're like, actually, he's old now and he's not as sharp as he used to be, so he's going to go through the rest of this journey not being in his prime, and then in the next one, he gets his fucking fingers cut off and loses a gun. Well, he doesn't lose a gun. He gives it to Eddie. So it's like, man, he's really like,
I think he has
yeah. What's
just
he
the
working with?
I think he has just these.
He's literally just working with these, dude. Right. So
No
it's like
thumb. Yeah, like you can't. What am I?
it's
Useless.
great. King's like,
Yeah.
yeah, your
He sets him up so
protagonist is so
like,
cool, and then just chops the legs up from underneath them.
dude, the first book sets him up so well. They have the whole dude. We're kind of spoiling Dark Tower at this point, but in the first book, he guns down literally an entire town.
Yeah,
Kids, moms,
everyone.
the priest.
He had
Like
to do
everybody
it to
comes
him.
after him, and he's like, "All right, like
He
it's them or
literally,
me."
he literally had to do it to him.
And he just fires off, and he kills the entire town. And you're like, "All right, like this guy's got it, right?" Yeah, and
Yeah,
then he
he's like,
gets
he's good,
yeah,
and
and
then
then
he
he
never
gets
quite reaches
weirdly
those
old.
heights again.
Then he gets weirdly old, and he loses almost an entire hand.
Yeah,
Like in the first 20 pages of the second book, and
yeah.
you're like, "No, like this is my guy."
And then it
And
just
so you get
the
like,
way it just happens so nonchalantly too. Like, oh, there's this fucking crab monster, and it just chops his fingers off. It's bizarre, man.
so good, man. Which is so
Uh,
great. It's so good. It just
so we've had this least favorite adaptations app thing while we're talking about Dark Tower, just in general. So let me circle back. I just have two shout outs real quick.
oh yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of the Carrie remake or the Pet Cemetery remake from 2019.
Mm.
I know those movies have their fans. Um, and like more power to you. For me, I feel like they kind of it's almost like being set up to fail because anytime I watch, like in particular, if I ever was to ever watch the Carrie remake, it's like why not just watch the original? Because you're gonna make those direct comparisons and stuff, and it's like it's just hard. And then the Pet Cemetery remake is that movie in its marketing, in its trailer, spoiled a really big plot element, like just in the trailer.
Lame.
So that movie has sort of like a stink around it with horror fans, like just in general. And then the movie itself is just not particularly memorable or interesting. So the '89 version, I would say, is definitely superior as well. So I think it's a case of remakes of King stuff never quite measuring up to the originals. Like, is there a remake of a King property that like outdoes the original? I guess you could make the case for the It 1990, but
But just the first one.
but that Yeah, but then chapter two has its fans as well, but I think it is not good. So and then it's divisive too. Like people really like the new Pennywise that Bill Skarsgård did, but then they also have this.
He's really good.
There's this deep, decades long fandom for Tim Curry. So it's like that one. I would say, if anything, is like split. You know.
Dude, what does I haven't seen the remake of Carrie. I think there's been a few remakes of Carrie.
Well, yeah. There's the TV movie
Okay.
that's more faithful to the book, and then the Carrie remake from 2013 is just like a straight up remake of the '76 Carrie.
So how does it differ though? Does it do anything different that you're like, oh, like this is a better choice, or is it just like a
No, I
not
would.
quite shot for shot, but it's just like the same thing, just not as good, not with the
It's
SpaceX.
it's admittedly been a minute since I've seen it, but like that's because I'm not a big fan of it. So
Sure,
like,
not gonna rewatch
um,
it.
right. I mean, out of curiosity more than anything is the reason why you would watch something that you're not a fan of, or maybe your thoughts have changed and it's been a while. But
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't really recall it. I mean, if anything, it's just got worse effects. Like that's the running
Mm.
theme here is like
It's
these modern.
CGI
Yeah,
because they could do that by then. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's like 74 Brian De Palma, or 76 Brian De Palma was like, got to figure all this shit out in a way that's practical and
That's all.
can
So
can
that's all you got.
and can get in under budget,
Yeah.
and by virtue of that it's aged better than any movie from 2013 ever will. So it's just hard to, because of course they're going to use CGI. Why
Right.
wouldn't they? So
Right.
it's like you almost look at any movie from that era and it's like they're just so rooted in their own era.
Dude, can I ask you somewhat related side tangent? Practical effects. The Thing has great practical effects,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
There was a Thing game that came out early 2000s
Yeah, for the
that they
PS2.
that they are
On
now that they're remastering and re-releasing soon. Have you seen this?
I have.
Okay, I saw it and thought of you. So
I'm very excited. They released a trailer. It's sort of cinematic. It's not doesn't show a ton of like gameplay. I
okay,
actually just recently bought the PS2 version for like $50.
dope.
Um, it didn't work on my PS2 though,
No,
so I'm a little concerned.
that's a
Um,
bummer.
yeah, it might be my PS2. I might need to get the disc resurfaced or anything.
Sad.
On Dead of Night, yeah, just no heart, no emotional connection to the characters. Agree with all that.
Hmm.
Um, the '89 version, people have a deep affinity for that movie, and the main character, people criticize his acting. I can't quite remember the actor's name, but he's really putting it all out there. Like he's kind of leaving it all out in the field, and I think for that reason, people buy into that one more, even if his performance maybe is a little hokey. But it's like it's hard to quite articulate what I'm saying. But
That makes sense.
because you're watching him and you're like he's all in, and whether or not it's good is sort of up to interpretation. But the fact that he's all in makes me believe it more.
Hmm.
And you don't really quite get anything like that in the new one. And then the Boogeyman was a movie that I saw last year, which is apparently based on some fucking thing that Stephen King shat out
I was
in
gonna
a
say I didn't even know that was I didn't even know that was him.
in a night. I mean, just the name, the Boogeyman, is like so uninspired, and I don't know if that's the name of the short story, or if they changed it, or even what short story it is, or what collection it's from. Like, but that's a movie that I went and saw by myself last year because I had my Regal Unlimited, and I was like, fuck it, I'll just go see this movie. How bad can it be, right? It was awful. I forgot it existed until Undead of Night even brought it up just now. That's how bad it
Rough.
is.
That's rough.
So yeah, that's a terrible one too. Um, and then I googled it. There are people who don't like Sleepwalkers. Obviously, I don't expect everyone to like that movie. It's very, it is what it is, but it's not really an adaptation. So I wouldn't lump it into this particular discussion.
True.
because it's its own thing. It's not based on anything. It's a screenplay that King wrote.
And
So
that's the only one of those that he's done still, correct?
I'm fairly certain. Yeah, somebody might be able to correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the only movie he ever like just straight up wrote a script for, and it
He was like,
wasn't
fuck
based
this.
on a prior work.
That's
So just
fair.
closing out the Stephen King talk, um, we can kind of talk about this a little, as little or as much as you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you were talking about this game that you played the other day. Um,
Yeah, we were talking. I'm currently playing Control for the first time, which is a Remedy game. Control is part of the like Alan Wake universe, and a game called Quantum Break. It's the studio Remedy that has like this whole universe of games. They're really really good. They're all horror esque. Alan Wake is very much like survival horror, right?
yeah, Alan Wake is like Twin Peaks, Stephen King, X Files, Twilight Zone kind of thing,
Okay.
all like kind of rolled into one.
Yeah, and Control is a little more like kind of like sci-fi esque, but definitely horror oriented and not survival horror. There's no like inventory management. It's not slow. It's very fast paced, but there's also this like very heavy element of Stephen Kingness
Mm.
throughout the whole thing, and the story and the way it's told, and the some of it's very like self aware, which he likes to do. Yeah, I haven't played Alan. I haven't actually played Alan Wake. Mark actually gave me a copy years ago that I played for a little while. I played the first couple levels. It was after I got surgery, so I was in very much a daze. I don't really remember it, but I played it a little bit. But now I'm playing Control, and I love it. And so I'm gonna finish that and then move into the Alan Wakes, play the sequel, all
Yeah,
that stuff. So yeah.
Alan Wake is a game that is great, and I played that a long time ago on the Xbox 360. And it's very much, and it's not hiding it either. It's very much
Mm-hmm.
inspired by Stephen King. I think they even shout him out by name at one point early on.
Probably.
But it's like deeply rooted in sort of that style of storytelling, and um but in the context of a video game, which is really cool. So like that's an example of how Stephen King has just sort of seeped his way into pop culture. He's got, you know, I'm pretty sure he's got like a Treehouse of Horror episode on like The Simpsons or something like that.
Mm. Oh, I'm sure.
But I don't have quite an idea of what exactly, like, is there anything else that you can think of that has sort of like by osmosis? I mean, it's sort of one of those things that you just kind of accept as being true, but you can't quite point to any one thing. But like his influence is undeniable. I mean, that's kind of the long and
Yeah.
short of it.
Yeah.
As we
Like,
as we close out here.
dude, Ellie's mom does not like horror, just in general,
Mm-hmm.
and she will directly cite having read Carrie when it came out at
Mm.
the time, and was like, "Fuck this." And since then, it's just like, nope. And so there's just a whole generation of people who like read that first book and were like, "All right, like this is a new level of like insanity, and no thanks." And he did that.
So many generations, man. Our parents'
He did that for us.
generations, our generation, and generations to come as well. It's interesting to think about. Hopefully, people are still reading books that far into the future,
I think so. I think we'll
and
be.
and not just like watching TikToks and shit.
Gotcha.
Um,
I think it's be around.
one would hope. I try not to be cynical, but you see the state of the world that we're in, and it's like, fuck. But I mean, I see it with myself, man. Like I spend a lot more time on my phone than I
True.
should be reading books,
Mm-hmm.
and but it's like the ease of it and the convenience, and it's like I understand why we're trending in that direction. So I try not to be too judgmental because I see it with myself, but I think being like self-aware is a good step. And then, but it's like these kids today, see, our generation's interesting because we remember a time before the internet. and we've
Mm-hmm.
grown up alongside it. But like my nephews grew up with an iPad like in their hand, so
True.
they
Yeah.
don't know a time before it. Like that's just all they've ever known.
So
But
crazy.
my nephews read books as well. But my fear is that whenever they're old enough to get a cell phone, they'll never touch a book again. So I don't mean to generalize. That's just sort of the way I see the youth of today. Hopefully, they're reading Stephen King and getting all fucked up and weird and reading shit that they shouldn't be. Oh, dude, King is also like weirdly sexual a lot.
That's
Like,
true. Yeah.
like I think he's caught flack for that. There's a famous scene in It
Yeah.
where there's like some shit that's weird, and it's with kids, and it's like
People were like,
it's
"Did we need this?" And he was like, "I'm trying to prove this point." And they were like,
he's
"Well,
like, well, it's because of this and this, and they're like,
right, but
they're like, I feel like you could have done this differently than the way that you opted to do it, and he's just like, that's
that's what
how I
happened."
that's how I
Yeah.
did it. Like that's the story, and it's like it's hard to argue with it because it's like how who am I to say what the story should have been? Like
Right.
it's really not up to anyone to say.
Especially in the way that he talks about his stories and his characters, where he's like, "I kind of set them up, and then they just kind of do their own thing." And you're like, "Yeah,
That's how a lot of storytellers are. Like they create the characters and then the characters kind of take on a life of their own.
mm-hmm.
And then it's like at a certain point he's not even telling the story anymore. Like they're just kind of acting out their own actions.
Right." But like at the end, you know what? We can blame the editor. There's no editor who was like, "Yo, like I get that, like this makes sense, but like,
the
can we
problem
kind of tweak
is
this?"
the problem is he's too famous now and too successful, so no editor is going to be like, you got to take this out. He's going to be like, well, I'm not doing that. They're going to be like, yes, Mr. King, like your books,
Like, all right,
dude. I buy his books just based on the fact that it's a new Stephen King book. That's
yeah,
literally the only information that I need.
yeah.
So like,
It's like a director putting out a movie, and you're like, I don't know what this
yeah,
movie
like
is, but
there's
like,
literally
yeah,
like his books are just guaranteed to sell when they come out. So like why edit anything? They're gonna buy it anyway. That's how we are now anyway. But
oh shit,
but yeah, man, I think this is a good place to close out. We're closing in on an hour and a half, so um we managed to talk about everything that we wanted to, which is nice. Um Honestly, we probably could have done another hour and a half, but like
easy.
quite frankly, there's just a lot that I haven't read. Um, so I don't feel qualified to comment directly on a lot of this stuff. So, but I think we covered a lot of the stuff that's like deeply significant to like you and I personally. So I feel like that's where the root of the good conversation is to be found anyway. Undead of Night
Yes.
says, yeah, this is one that I read back in like 2013 when I was still going to community college. And I really need to read it again because I
I feel like
remember
I got you. Isn't the version you have now the one that I did? I send you one?
yes, you did. You gave it to me for either Christmas or a birthday. Which,
Yeah.
speaking of which, I still have a birthday present for you whenever you're
Yeah, I'll be back in 3 weeks. Yep.
fuck yeah.
Let's go.
Um,
On
cool
writing
man.
is so good.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Like he's got a lot of range, man. He from his like autobiographical stuff, like on writing, to his non-horror stuff. The guy is just he just simply does not miss. So, we didn't really touch a ton on the whole 1,000 subscriber thing, but I don't really know what else there is to say other than
There's 1,000 of them.
how integral you have been to the process as far as motivating me and helping me on the production and technical side of things. And then all the people who are here, like either in the comments of the videos or here tonight. I know it's a little late now and it's Friday night. People are out and about, but like on Dead of Night, really appreciate all your support, engaging with us all night. Nick, I don't know if you're here still, but like the fact that he popped in is super awesome. I really like his channel. I watch his videos all the time. Beyond the Grave, John Doe. Like these are guys that are frequent flyers in the Tales from the Shelf comment section. So it really means a lot seeing you guys here. So this is just the beginning. We're not stopping. If anything, I'm feeling more motivated than ever to keep making stuff and like get better at editing and just producing like high quality videos. So I'm looking forward to the future and everything that is on the horizon.
Very excited.
Do you have anything you want to say before we close it out here, man?
What's the next video? Do you know? Are you working on something?
So I looked and sorry, why is John Doe's comment still highlighted? Sorry. I've only done a few rankings. I don't like the idea of like banging out a bunch like back to back, but I thought it could be fun to like really space them out, because my third video ever, which was let's see, December 18th, 2022, that was the Silent Night Deadly Night franchise ranking. And then 7 months ago I did the Halloween franchise. Excuse me. So I like the idea of like every 6 or 7 months just like ranking a franchise. I feel like it'll make it more of an event that way, and be a little bit more fun for me as well. So I'm going to do the Friday the 13th franchise ranking, which is funny because Rain and I have actually been working our way through all of those.
Oh, perfect.
So they're fresh, and I just have to watch the last couple. Laren, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You are always a welcome sight in these comments. I will say that.
Thanks,
really appreciate all the support, man. Have a good night. I'll be seeing you. So yeah, probably the Friday the 13th ranking. That'll be fun for me to make. And then after that, we'll see. We'll see where we go. Probably like a physical media topic, and then video essay. I like the idea of kind of rotating. I don't want to do like a bunch of rankings back to back, a bunch of physical media back to back, a bunch of video essays back to back. I think it's more practical for me to sort of bounce around, and I don't know if that's conducive to like a good feed or a good algorithm, but hopefully it'll give people a variety of things to watch. Is my thinking and my hope, and hopefully that is something that can be sustainable going forward. Because I really don't want to pigeonhole myself. I want to be able to do a lot of different things, you know.
I feel like being excited about the thing that you're making while you're making it is like the main sauce.
Yeah, the second I lose that, it's like, what's the point, you know?
Right.
So hopefully people enjoy watching it though, because that, as much as people will say like views don't count or whatever, and it's like you gotta do it for you, at the end of the day, we want people to watch the things or consume the things that we make and enjoy them. So yeah, so 1,000 of you have done that, and that's so cool. I feel like it's been like a year and 6 months.
Dude, it's been a year and 8. It was what? No, end of
October. October 29th, I think.
It's been like a year and 8 months.
I feel like that's a pretty good time. I don't know how long it takes your average channel to hit 1,000, but I've had some help, man. I've had some pushes from some big channels, namely Jeff at Films at Home and Ken with Mid-Level Media. They had me on when I was like, I want to say like under 500. Definitely under 500 for Ken, and possibly like 5 or 6 by the time I was on Jeff. So things like that were really cool, and things that I'll never ever forget. So and hopefully I'm in a position to do the same for somebody else one day. So all right, man. Well, good night to all you guys watching. Really appreciated all your input and your feedback. The next show might not be on a Friday. We still have to figure that out. But there will be another one probably in 2 weeks, roughly. Maybe not 2 weeks to the day, but yeah. So stay tuned for what that one will be about in the community tab section. I'll be posting about that as soon as we've locked that down. And so, with that, thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for subscribing and all that great stuff. It's very much appreciated. So, good night and
Night,
take
y'all.
care and watch more movies. I almost forgot to say the thing. Take care and watch more movies. Good night, everybody.
Peace.